So in today's video, we are going to be talking about empires, specifically empires from 600 BCE to 600 CE, which is what we call the second wave of civilizations. Before we go any further, let's talk about what an empire is. So an empire is simply one group of people that have control over a diverse population, or one group that rules over multiple groups. Um, when defined, an empire is a central state that exercises political control over a large amount of territory that contains many diverse groups. Now, while various empires obviously have important and significant differences, the core idea of central state expanding remains the same. All empires believe and follow expansion, through which they gain more land and more people. And upon taxing that land and those very people, they get more money, more wealth, and larger armies. Now, due to more wealth and larger armies, only because of having these two, in fact, they can expand further or even begin to expand in the first place. So there's this whole cycle that goes on. Um, Now, when you talk about how empires rise, again, like I said before, there are obviously differences depending on what empire we're talking about and what that their particular stage was and state was at that point in time. But there are a few basic principles and basic causes that are applicable majorly to all empires. So we're just going to run through that. You have weak neighbors, leadership, whether poor or strong, ideology, wealth, again, whether having lack of wealth or excess of it. You have culture, technology, again, whether advanced or really poor and practically non existent, and power vacuum. Now, today we're going to discuss these in great details using examples. So, before we do that, let's understand what prominent empires were there from 600 BCE to 600 CE. So, you have ancient Greece, and Achaemenid Persia, Maurya Empire in India, Han China, and the Roman Empire. Now, this is pretty much a rough, sketchy chronological order of how these empires came about. They always exist, obviously, always existed, but when each of them were at their peak. We're gonna begin with the Achaemenid Empire today. So the Achaemenid Empire, technically started with Achaemenes, the founder, but we're gonna talk about Cyrus the Great. He was a descendant of Achaemenes, and he was known as the model ruler. Now he overthrew his grandfather, and he was called Cyrus the Great, or like a model ruler, because he had excellent military leadership. He was very tolerant of different people, and he had this ability to bring people and inspire them to join the fold. Now, one of his greatest victories was, apart from this entire expansion of Persia, right? As you can see, the entire Green Asia, the Persia was conquering the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now, this was very significant because in doing so, he freed the Jews from captivity, and instead of enslaving them himself, he actually resettled them in Jerusalem, where he worked with them to rebuild Solomon's temple. So this obviously has biblical symbolism and so on, but majorly it just showed how moral he was as a leader. After his death, we have Cambyses. Let's just do a family tree so that we don't get confused. So we have Achaemenid right at the top, the founder, therefore called Achaemenid dynasty. Here, after his many descendants, we have Cyrus. Then we have Cyrus's son called Cambyses. Now, Cambyses, after Cyrus's mysterious death, which is kind of suspicious, he becomes king. And his greatest victory was his conquest of Egypt. Now, you can see that Cyrus had a huge impact, right? This entire orange area is what Cyrus had already pretty much conquered and, established as the Achaemenid Empire. Cambyses decides to head into Egypt, which is what Cyrus had not done, and decides to, take over and conquer them, which is what he did. But while he was gone, he left this kind of power vacuum and were introduced to Cyrus's other son, Bardia, who decides that he wants the throne. Um, Now Cambyses obviously finally after like a long time because communication was slow gets to know of this and starts to rush home. But in the meanwhile, we have Darius, who is a distant relative of Cambyses and Bardia, but claims descendant from Achaemenid, who says that the Bardia who wants the throne is not the actual Bardia. The actual Bardia, Cyrus's son Bardia, died long ago. This guy is just an impostor. And so he convinced the nobility that he was a usurper and managed to get him killed. And meanwhile, Cambyses, who was rushing on his way back from Egypt, if you remember, again died from unknown from an unknown cause, which is very suspicious. But we have left with the crown, which goes to Darius because he claimed descendant and was a distant relative, and so on. Now, Darius again was called Darius the Great because it was during his rule and reign that the Achaemenid Empire was at its maximum extent, was at its peak. Um, the expansion was great. They were the largest, and population was like large. They had enough resources, supplies, and wealth, and so on. Anyway, so now Darius had obviously his set of descendants. We have his he died in the Greco-Persian wars, which was between Greece and Persia, and he lost and was unsuccessful. And his son followed suit, and he died as well. The rest of the people are not that important, so we're just going to remember that after all of these, after Darius's numerous descendants, we had Darius the Third,